What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a film review for The Suicide Squad, which I'm glad to say is getting much better reviews than its predecessor. Those reviews look like this. The critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is at 92, which is very impressive for a comic book movie, considering that there are people out there that don't believe comic book movies are cinema. That's a completely other thing we can get into some other time. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is at 87, and just like my last film review for Black Widow, both the Rotten Tomatoes scores are the highest. So yeah, Metacritic, being, as far as these scores are concerned, the harshest. The actual critic score on Metacritic is 74, the user score is at 73. Once again, the users on Metacritic being harsher on films than the critics. They were also the lowest score on the Black Widow one as well. It's very interesting to see that. And then IMDb coming in the middle with a 78, giving us an average of, I believe it's 80.8, so rounding that up to 81, just to give us a whole number, because I don't do decimal points when I'm breaking my stuff down. So yeah, very interesting. So let's dive into it. For me, the plot and character development, it's a James Gunn film, and the one thing that he does really well is character development. He really makes you love the characters. He even gives character development to the person, the character that's put there purely for the comic relief. In his Guardians of the Galaxy films, that's Groot, but he still shows some character growth with Groot in both of those films. In this one, the comic relief character is King Shark, Nanawe, who he treats very much the same way. Instead of a talking tree, it's a talking shark. He gives the whole family aesthetic to Bloodsport and Ratcatcher. Obviously Harley's in there, and then we have our Nebula character, which I would consider as sort of they're on the team, but in a sort of antagonistic way. So yeah, when you look at it like that, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, this is just DC's Guardians of the Galaxy. But it works, it really does. The character development for Bloodsport, starting off as, not really caring pretty much about anybody but himself, and thinking that he's, not good enough to be a father to his daughter and all this sort of stuff, to, by the end of it, not only sort of standing up and protecting Ratcatcher too, but I would assume he has a conversation off screen with his daughter where she sort of tells him that she's proud of him now. So he sort of does a big 180. Yeah, if we're looking at one character being the main character in this film, it's definitely Bloodsport. There's the whole one-upmanship between him and Peacemaker, and yeah, the fact that Bloodsport, at least in the DCEU, is listed as being one of Rick Flag's old comrades from his unit. It does mean that he's got sort of a bit of a moral center there. So it really sort of ticks him off and sort of makes him realize that, okay, this is what I've got to do in order to actually complete this mission in a way that I find satisfactory. And he ends up willfully beating Peacemaker when he finds out that Peacemaker killed Rick Flag. So some very good character development. The plot, it's a Suicide Squad mission. So it starts off, go in, do the thing, and get out. That's it. And then they get in there, they do the thing. Waller does what Waller does best and flies off the absolute deep end because she's fucking crazy. And in this film, even the people that help her run Task Force X disagree with her, and they're the ones that end up sort of knocking her out so that they can actually save the day and beat Starro, because they realise that if Starro ever gets off Corto Maltese, then it's just going to come to America to do the exact same thing there. The performances, I feel like I should mention the absolutely packed cast here. Obviously, not all of them make it through, but I like that within the group that dies right at the beginning, other than Rick Flag and Harley Quinn, who have to make it through because they're popular characters, and Rick Flag was destined to die in this film. Other than that, pretty much everybody else on that first team is a frequent collaborator with James Gunn. So that's kind of the James Gunn team, and then there's this is the team we want for this film. You've got Michael Rooker, who played Yondu. You've got Nathan Fillion, who's a frequent collaborator with James Gunn. Sean Gunn is in there, both as the mocap for Weasel, and he also has his face is in there as a character, in the same way that he did the mocap for, I think it was Groot, and he also played Kraglin in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, so he has a similar, my eye, no, it's still there, but yeah, no, he has a, oh wow, it's really in there. Please tell me I got it. Oh, cool. Yep, that's it. That eye's gonna start weeping now. He has a very similar role there. I'm just trying to think who else was on that team. Flula Borg, whose name you may not recognise, but whose face and comedy you probably do. He was in the second Pitch Perfect movie. He was sort of the guy that was sort of at the forefront of what they call themselves, the Sound Machine, I think is what they called themselves. He was sort of the front man of that, as opposed to the front woman as well. Pete Davidson was in there. Jai Courtney came back to reprise his role of Captain Boomerang, just to end up dying. So their performances are only sort of there in the beginning, but then like David Desmalchian's character of Polka Dot Man was he did that really well. Daniela Melchior as Ratcatcher 2 was brilliant. I haven't seen a lot of her other stuff, but she was brilliant in this. Idris Elba and Margot Robbie always kill it, no matter what they're in. John Cena played John Cena. He's sort of, I don't know, I feel like he gets typecast a lot. And that, I think, is a little bit of a detriment as to sort of, I'm not a huge John Cena fan, and I feel like that's because he gets typecast. He's always playing the same character. I'd love to see him do something a little bit different, a little bit outside of that typecasting. But for this film, he played himself. Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag played brilliantly. Peter Capaldi as the Thinker was amazing. Yeah, a lot of really high-profile actors and a lot of really good performances. So yeah, it gets a 9. Directing and editing gets a 9. I mean, this was a gory film. James Gunn basically said, okay, these guys are bad guys. Let's have a little bit of fun with that. And so, you know, there's not just, you know, some questionable morals in there. There's actually, and I think some of these were in the trailer as well, but there's like, you know, King Shark tearing a guy in half, and you get to see all these innards come out, and there's blood spray, and there's all sorts of stuff. And I think the decision to keep it that way and to go for the R rating was really a good idea. I think the first one ended up getting pushed back to being a PG-13, but definitely keeping it as an R, I think, helped this film feel a little bit more like these are bad guys and we need to remember that. But just because, you know, Superman or Batman would fight them and arrest them doesn't mean that they don't have a moral center and they don't have some humanity in there. Maybe they're doing these bad things for the right reasons. I liked the decision to sort of go with that. So yeah, and then obviously the way the sequences are put together are really cool as well. The cinematography was amazing as well. I think that just sort of goes without saying. James Gunn's films are always just beautiful to look at, even if you're not absorbing any of the story elements or being critical of the performances or anything like that. Just watching it, it's visually pleasing. It's very easy to look at, it's very easy to get immersed in, and obviously that's largely due to the cinematography. So yeah, the other thing that James Gunn does really well, and he does this with the Guardians films as well, is as he's writing the script, he sets out what his soundtrack's going to be as well. So the soundtrack itself can tell a story. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about how James Gunn directs. Is that he's aware that, yes, the visuals and the script need to be able to show the story, but if you really listen to the music, you can really get immersed into the characters and what their stories are, you know, what their emotions are, how they're feeling, all that sort of stuff. So the soundtrack in a James Gunn film is always going to be amazing. It's always going to be scored beautifully. It's always going to have, you know, these big, these big moments with, you know, really popular songs Obviously, in the Guardians film, they're from the 70s, but yeah, again, same thing here, and it was really well done. Special and visual effects. We literally fought a kaiju in this film. So there was, and we had Weasel, we had Nanawe, King Shark, we had Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher. I would imagine that all of the rats doing what they're told, including Sebastian, who's so cute, that all would have been CG. The detachable kid, who's based off Arm Fall Off Boy in the comics, his bits are obviously going to be CG as well when he's actually using his powers. So yeah, as well as the fact that, you know, we're looking at bad guys, so explosions, gunfights, all that sort of stuff is going to be in there. So a lot of practical effects, a lot of CG, and for it to come out looking as believable as it did, considering that we were dealing with some pretty out there characters, including Starro the Conqueror. I think in order for it to, even with the suspension of disbelief for the fact that it's a superhero film, and then the fact that it still felt like you could go to Corto Maltese, which is a fictional country, and visit Jotunheim, and you'd actually find Starro there. I feel like that's just a testament to how well done the CG was on this. Coming right down to the fact that he kept the anatomy of an eyeball accurate. My friend wasn't expecting that when Harley went through the pupil, like went through Starro's pupil, that it would just be full of, you know, liquid. But that is accurate. If you've ever dissected an eyeball in science class, you will know that once you get past the lens and the pupil, it's just a big ball of liquid in your head. And so yeah, a 9 for me. The set design and costuming, I'm gonna give a 9 to as well. Because, like I said, Corto Maltese, which is a fictional country, felt like it was an actual real place you could go to. Now, I will admit that I'd seen some trailer breakdowns before I went and saw this, so I'm going to include that in part of my marketing as well. But the flag that they created, because they had to create a whole flag for Corto Maltese, but the flag they created used the colours that a lot of sort of Caribbean, South American countries had very similar colours, with the red, white and blue, red, yellow and blue. It's not America. Red, yellow and blue. And just the fact that instead of being vertical stripes, like a lot of them are, this one was horizontal stripes and had a little coat of arms in the centre of it, just to sort of, you know, make it feel real, but also not actually be a real flag. So that alone, and the fact that you see that on like the presidential residence, all of the sets that are inside Jotunheim are obviously going to have been, you know, built so that you can, so the actors could have interacted with them. The little camp where the rebels are based in would have been an actual set. And there would have been a lot of practical sets on this film. And yeah, making them believable is no mean feat. So the set design itself was amazing, but then you get into the costumes. Bloodsports, for one, I want that technology to exist. It doesn't have to be, being able to pull a massive big gun off of little pieces on my chest. But if I'm able to sort of, just grab a bit and that's, my wallet or whatever, I can sort of grab it and instead of having to fit it around in a pocket sort of a thing. I don't know. The whole aesthetic of his suit, I loved. Because he just seemingly can pull a weapon out of nowhere, and it's like, where was he hiding that? His suit is so sleek, and he's able to pull this massive gun off of it when they're fighting Starro. I thought that was really cool. Harley spends most of the film fighting in a dress, which I think is really cool, especially to have done away with the skimpy costume she had in the first one. I think that was a very good decision. Yeah, I mean, there's one, this is probably going back to my performance bit, but there's one scene there where Margot Robbie really shows just how strong she actually is. And I recognise that in some of the shots she's probably standing on a chair and just sort of, but there's other shots where there's, she's probably on cables, but she's still having to hold herself up to an extent, while she chokes a guy out with her legs, and it's an impressive bit of physicality, and she does that in this dress costume as well, which is supposed to be this big sort of ball gown sort of thing, so it's not exactly a tactile thing to fight in, it's not a tactile thing to run in, and she's still able to pull off her heroics in it. So I think, having thought that through, it was a very clever decision on their part to give her that costume. Ratcatcher 2's mask is really cool. The rest of her costume I didn't find to be, overly exciting, but definitely the mask was very cool. I think they deliberately made Peacemaker's costume purposefully over the top and look how much of a superhero I am because I'm trying to find peace. I think that was deliberately done, and I sort of picked up as soon as there was a little bit of rivalry between him and Bloodsport that he was going to end up being slightly antagonistic within the team, he was going to cause some issues, and he inevitably did at the end when he killed Rick Flag. Moving on, accuracy and originality, I've given an 8-2, because, when you're looking at something like the Suicide Squad, which is essentially in the comics, it's just a task force where you've got all the inmates in a prison and you can just sort of pick and choose whoever, put them on a team, send them off, and if they survive, they get time off their sentence. If they don't, no issues, they were criminals anyway. and like super criminals at that. So you can't really look specifically at any one iteration of the team. You sort of have to look at in the spirit of the comics. For that matter, the villain of this being Star the Conqueror, he originally appeared in like the very first Justice League comic. So the Justice League is not the Suicide Squad. And so looking there, I mean, you can look at some of the more recent runs that have had Star the Conqueror as their main villain, to see if it's accurate to him. And as far as I understand it, it was. But the reason it's not a 9 is because I don't know that much. So as far as accuracy is concerned, I feel confident that it was fairly accurate. For me, it was more of the originality of it being a James Gunn film, and we know that he likes to take a thing, put a whole spin on it, and present us with something that we didn't really expect, that really sort of gave it as high a score as I gave it, which was an 8. The cast and the marketing, as I've already said, this film was absolutely packed. This film was not just 1 or 2 stars and some other really good actors. This film was a whole ass constellation, with the moon in as well. It was amazing, if you're looking at it as just by the cast. The marketing did really well for it as well. I don't, if I'm remembering correctly, there is a possibility that I'm not, but if I'm remembering correctly, the trailers for it had original score. They didn't have any like the first Suicide Squad film, after its first trailer, I think, is when they started introducing the ones that had Bohemian Rhapsody in there. I don't think the trailers for this one had anything like that. So we were really just able to sort of watch what was going on, and I'll be like, oh, this is gonna have a Queen song in it, I'll go and watch it just for that moment, see when that song is actually used. So the marketing for this was actually more directed at like, this is our story, we're very confident in our story, come and watch this film for its story and for its characters and, you know, for its spectacle, rather than this has got some really good songs in it, come and watch it. Because knowing that it's being directed by James Gunn, you're already going to know that it's going to have good music in it. So if you're going just for the soundtrack and the scoring, you're already going to go see it as soon as it was revealed that James Gunn is directing it. So I think that really helped in its case, and so we got an 8 for that. As far as continuity is concerned, I've given an 8 as well. For what the DCEU is, I think this fits. I think this fits quite well. Obviously, this is no well-oiled machine like the MCU is, and at the moment, like the last couple of films have really had that strong female presence. So we had, like, literally the last 2 films before this one were the Birds of Prey film and Wonder Woman 1984. And then you have this, where we've got Harley Quinn again, but you've also got a really strong female character in Ratcatcher 2, who has a very interesting backstory. He's kind of, you know, I think as far as the team is concerned, could kind of be sort of the second billing to Bloodsport, as far as that's concerned, because she's really the one that sort of, you know, convinces King Shark not to eat any of them, because, you know, they're his friends, and they'll be his friends, and yeah, she sort of helps bring the team together. So we've got a really good, strong female character there, and other than that, the DCEU doesn't really have a direction, which I think is kind of, if I'm going to be critical of the DCEU as a whole for a second, I think that's its whole issue. We had Man of Steel, and I was like, okay, cool, this is kind of a remake of Superman 2, which was like the most popular one, so it made sense that that would be the one that they'd sort of take inspiration from to start off their shared universe. And then they sort of rushed in with Batman v Superman. Wasn't really well received. The next one was the original Suicide Squad, which fans are now wanting David Ayer's cut of, and I believe that we're probably going to get that as well. We then had Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Justice League Aquaman, and then, yeah, some female leads. There doesn't seem to be any big setting up for, I mean, if you watched the Snyder Cut of Justice League, you know that the Darkseid was sort of in that, and if they wanted to, they could sort of have that be a thread that they could follow for Darkseid inevitably coming to Earth and fighting the Justice League. But as it stands, that's not really in, you know, the theatrical cuts. So it doesn't really seem to have a destination. Whereas right from the end of Iron Man 1, it was like, okay, we're gonna assemble the Avengers. We're gonna make them one at a time, and then we're gonna assemble them. The end of that film was like, here's Thanos, and then for the next two phases, everything was building up to this big thing with Thanos, where the producers and the directors have decided that we're going to get to a point here, and we're going to have to split them up to make this bit, you know, feel like, oh, well, crap, like, if they'd just been together instead, they would have been able to win it, and then they do that, and they do win, and, like, there was an actual, you can actually follow it, and there's a storyline, and it doesn't seem to be the same with the DC movies, which is unfortunate, because I do think that these movies have the potential to be that. There's just no coordination with their stories. They just seem to be like, you know, yep, and then on this date this thing happened, and that was it. Everybody went home after that, and it didn't continue on to this. Yeah, so that's my little 2 cents. But for what the DCEU is, I do think it sort of followed on nicely from a couple of things. Like Harley Quinn's involvement is addressed pretty much as soon as she shows up. Captain Boomerang, like, why are you back in jail? Because the last time we saw her, obviously she wasn't in jail. She was actually having drinks with a cop. So we're like, okay, well, how's she back in jail now? So they addressed that. Yeah, we sort of get introduced to, okay, why are these other characters here? And they're fairly comic accurate things as well. And it does sort of continue on sort of the story of Task Force X as a whole project. So yeah, if this is a turn point, and I hope it is, I'm excited to see what's coming next for the DCEU. I do hope that whatever it ends up being that there is some direction to what comes next for them. Because like I said, I think this has the potential to be something really cool. I just don't think they've really sort of picked yet what that thing's going to be. So yeah, I think we'll have to wait until after the Flash, because I feel like they're just sort of buying their time with establishing what this universe is kind of like before the Flashpoint gives us, you know, maybe a Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline with the films, which could be really cool. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. So all in all, I've given it a grand total of 87, which is actually what the Rotten Tomatoes audience score is, and which is also 6 points higher than the average that we were comparing against as well. So yeah, that's all I've got for this video. If you are new here, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well. If you want to be notified when I upload new videos. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And links to Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and IMDb will be in the description as well. And until next time, guys, keep your head screwed on.